Welcome to my show of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, where we hear from regular people who got tired of living their ordinary lives and were not afraid to make that jump.
You gotta be different. You can't be doing what everyone else is doing. You gotta create action. You gotta create momentum. So I'm looking for demand and I'm looking for mentorship because I wanted to know everything my mentor knew.
People who are just like you and me. Hey, Corey, my man, how you doing?
What's up, David? Glad to be here. How are you?
Great, man. Glad you're here, man. This is our episode 2, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things virtual. So super excited to have you, man. You got a really unique story, how you found the insurance industry, things that you've done before and everything. So before I get started, my name's David Price. We recruit and hire agents nationwide to work from their house, work selling insurance on the phone. If you like something here, please subscribe, hit the little thumbs up button, put some comments in, hit the little bell. We'd love to get more subscribers and try to put out more videos. And if there's a video that you want to see or you want to learn about, throw that in the comments and I'll make a video for you. So Corey, first off, man, let's hear a little bit about yourself. Let's hear about, I know you're currently selling insurance. You run an insurance agency. You're doing a great job of training and mentoring and teaching people and bringing people into the business. But tell me about, what you did before that and what found you or how you ended up over here.
Yeah, David, thank you. First off, thank you for inviting me to do this. I definitely appreciate the time and the value that you've given to my life. We've only met, 9 months ago at this point. And if it wasn't for David Price and what he's done, I would never be able to grow at the pace that I've grown. So I want to start there by thanking you for sure. So my name is Corey Launche from South Louisiana. I'm sure you can't tell by my accent. That's okay though. So that used to be something that held me back. And now I use it as an advantage. And I think that's one of the things in my life that once I got to a certain age and to a certain skill level, maybe what it was, I started using what I thought was disadvantages to my advantage. So to kind of go back and tell you a little bit about me and myself and how I found the insurance industry. So I always wanted to be a business owner. I remember as a kid thinking, man, the guys that own businesses, they make all this money and they ride around in these nice cars and boats. They have all these beautiful women and all this money and they live a perfect life. And I didn't have the context to understand how they created it. I just had what they showed on the outside. Nobody in my family was successful in business. I don't come from a lineage of people who showed me how to do it. I actually come from a lineage of people who showed me the wrong way to do it. And so at a very young age, I didn't have a lot of guidance. So all I did was I made the wrong decisions, right? And so I think for me, what got me started into sales and that type of thing was I quit school very, very early in the 8th grade. And so when you quit school in the 8th grade and you don't have a lot of support, you have to do something to eat, right? So I started to sell seafood door to door in Louisiana. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Louisiana, but you can get seafood out of ditches in Louisiana. It's everywhere, right? So it's pretty hard to go and sell seafood door to door, but I did that and I was pretty successful. And that's where I really cut my teeth on sales and I learned the grind that it takes to actually talk to 10 people or 15 people and make one sale. That's where I learned it. And so through the years, I've always wanted to do business. So I did different ventures. I started my first company when I was 23 years old, and it was a landscape company here in Louisiana. Started a lawn care landscape company. And if you know anything about that industry, probably 85% of businesses in that industry only do $100,000 a year or less, right? The ceiling in that industry is really, really low. But I went into it and I ended up building, within 9 years, I built a company that did over $400,000 in revenue. I knew my potential was a lot higher than that industry could provide. So I started looking at different opportunities and different avenues. And by really the grace of God, not by my design, the world got shut down with COVID. And when that happened, a lot of my lawn care landscape jobs, they said, hey, you're the first person to go. We don't know where our money's going to go. We don't know what's going to happen. So I was the first one that they decided they needed to get rid of. And here I am sitting with, 4 children, a wife, and a household to provide for, and I'm about to lose all of my income. And so in those moments, you have a decision to make, and it's like, okay, I'm going to tuck my tail and I'm going to run, or I'm going to find a way to make it. And so what I did was I found a way, and I started another company in the medical supply industry. We took that company to 7 figures in revenue pretty quickly. And then around that same time, I started a third company, and that was a construction roofing type company. And we ended up taking that company to 7 figures in revenue between different aspects of that industry. And so here I am with 3 companies at the same time, pulling my hair out. I had no experience on running companies. I didn't know what I was doing. I was figuring it out as I went. And so all of that kind of exploded and imploded on itself. And in the midst of that, I had a business partner that he and I didn't see eye to eye on the vision of the company. And so we split up, pretty bad deal. And so I was going really for about a year where I didn't know what I was going to do next. I felt stuck. I felt depressed. I felt like there was no way forward. And then my mom called me one day, and she's only done this one other time before this. The first time she did it was when I was 23 years old. And she said, you need to start a lawn care company, right? Well, when she did it the second time, she called me. She said, hey, there's this girl online, and she's making all this money with insurance. I don't know what she's doing, but she's making money with insurance. You need to call her. And I said, Mom, listen, everybody says they make money online. I'm not calling her. And she said, you need to just call her. I said, all right, send me her number. I'm going to call her. And so I called her, and she introduced me to David Price. And they started to tell me about this insurance deal where we're selling insurance for one carrier, and we sell life insurance to elderly, couples, people that are 60 plus, but you could sell anyone from 0 to 85 years old. It's called final expense. I had no clue what final expense was. All right. I knew the insurance industry was a great industry, but I didn't know how to get into it. And so this was my first real look at this niche of the industry. And so once I looked at it, I met David. I started looking at all his YouTube stuff. I watched every video he had. I would suggest that you do that, right? Watch every single one of the interviews, watch all the people, watch everything that he says, because there's things that he said in each video and interview that told me that he and I would probably work well together. And we had some of the same thinking, right? We had some of the same experiences. We had been along some of the same experiences, and I thought that could be helpful. And so I decided, you know what, let me look into this company. But not only look into this company, let me look into multiple other companies as well to make sure I'm getting on the right track. So when I looked into Senior Life and kind of seen the whole package, they have leads, which when you own a business, a big portion of your business is finding out how to find your customer. All right. Well, that was taken care of. I didn't have to build that. All right. The insurance application process was so simple that my 9-year-old, literally, I can sit her at my computer and she can write an insurance policy right now with no training. That was a huge factor to me. All right. And then I wanted to, know about the trust of the company, the stability of the company, to know that, hey, if I make the decision to jump in with David Price and the Price Group, 6 months later, will I think it's a bad idea? Right. So I looked and I read the contracts for other major companies. I'm not going to name them here, but you name them. I researched and looked for their hiring contracts to see what they paid, how much they paid their commission, what their policies looked like. Like, I really wanted to understand the market. And once I did that, I realized that Senior Life has a package deal here, right? You can sell any insurance anywhere. You can go anywhere and sell insurance. But what Senior Life has here is a total package with the policy, with the insurance application, the leads, the mentorship, the platform, when you put it all together, it's the best out there. That's what I found. So I jumped in, committed from day one. I said, you know what? I don't know anything about this industry. I'm going to trust David, right? I'm going to trust what he says, and I'm going to do exactly what he says. And he knew that I wanted to build an agency. I wanted to build a big business. But he said, look, if you can learn how to sell first, then you can go ahead and build an agency. So that's what I did. I just started selling. I was selling 8,000 annual premium a week from week one. And he was like, okay, now you can start growing. And so probably, I would say the second month I was here, because I watch, all right, David, and you probably noticed that I was doing this by the questions that I was asking. I remember we were in a Zoom meeting one day, and you were like, you know, that's a really good question that I don't get asked a lot. And I knew that I was onto something by the things I was seeing. But I noticed that David had built a system here where you can come in, and as long as you knew how to sell policies in this system, you can build a business with the platform that David has. He has a recruiting program, all right? And because of David's success, he has a whole world of people that are watching him. And every day they're watching him to see what his business is doing. And so then he takes people like me who come in, who believe in the system, who first learn how to sell and become really good at that, so you can teach somebody else to do it. And there's a handful of us, right, that he's picked, that he says, okay, I trust you to help mentor people that want to work with me. And so once I seen that he had that system in place, David and I had a couple conversations to see exactly what that looks like. And once I decided, yeah, that's a good fit for me, I went all in. I literally went all in. I believe that the investment was going to turn around very quickly, and it did. And so for me, I do things like 10 toes in. If I'm going to go, I'm going to go all in. And when I did that, I basically went from somebody who's selling insurance on a daily basis with just me to having a business that does $100,000 a month within 4 months. And I couldn't have done that. I don't think I could have done that in any other system besides this system.
Yeah, I mean, you did some amazing things, and it's funny just listening to your story, and we're gonna roll back to some stuff. But you know, I also own a landscape business. Yours sounded way more successful than mine. You know, I had a construction business. We were successful, but probably wasn't in business as long as you. Sound like we both had some partner issues. But I love to talk about the landscape business because. And you know what you said earlier. I used to say the same thing. My grandfather was in business. He was a business person, and all I knew was welfare or business. Like that's it. Like the whole rest of my family's on like welfare and social security, disability, and like, you know, the government. And then there's my grandfather who was a business owner, right? So it was like, you know, basically wait for your government check and wait for your food stamps to get something. And you know, part of my childhood didn't own a car and went through that whole world. Or my grandfather, who bought a brand new Lincoln Town car every couple of years, went on vacations, all these other things. So those are the things I knew. So I'm like, all right, cool. Welfare or business owner. Welfare or business owner. I'm gonna try to be a business owner. And if you're a business owner, you're good. But then I started realizing that not all businesses are created equal, like you said, right? So, you know, a landscape business, right? What a hustle, right? It's, you know, and there's people that are probably really happy with their lives. One of my good friends from high school, I think he was really smart, and I'm assuming his dad coached him on this, but he started cutting lawns in high school. So he's doing all his friends' parents' lawns, right? That when you have the access to cut the most grass, right? You know what I mean? Like, so he had a huge clientele, and I remember, dude, it was like, I think it was like on a Wednesday, he had 55 cuts like scheduled for a Wednesday. You know what I mean? Just on Wednesday, like that was his big day. I'm sure it's more now. But what it was is he wouldn't take a lawn unless it was a neighbor of one of his at that point, right? Because he was so big and it didn't make sense. So we were in a conversation and he's like, yeah, I'd probably give away so much business I could start, feed a whole nother company. I was like, all right, sign me up. Are you serious? And I went and bought all the equipment. I asked him exactly what to buy, like what mower, and my only experience before that was, I worked for a landscaper. I was like out of work, right? My friend got me a job as a landscaper for like $8 an hour. And I lasted like a week, right? They just said you weren't working out, right? I showed up, but I was just slow, right? I had no experience. So I was just really, really slow. They're giving me like the trimmer, right? That makes the grass line really, the edger, right? That makes the grass line. And I was just so slow. I was just so slow at it because I didn't have experience. And eventually, when I had to do it myself, I got fast at it and stuff like that. But tell me about like, how do you get a landscape business up to $400,000 a year in revenue? Because, one, right. For me, I remember I bought like, and again, just being so lost on like how important leads are, how important marketing is and all that stuff. I bought this box of door hangers for my landscape business. And, I started putting them up and I wasn't getting results and I stopped. So I had a box of door hangers that I never even like took the time to put up, right? You know what I mean? Again, just like so lost in business and what you got to be successful, but obviously you weren't. So tell me a little bit about how you had success doing that and what you did exactly.
You touched on it a little bit already by you were slow on the edger and the trimmer. And in that business, if you're slow, your time is going to eat up. Your labor cost is going to be so high that you can't make any money because the margins are so small. So I worked for a guy who owned a lawn service, and he had owned it back in the day whenever it was very profitable to own one. And then whenever I started, there was so much competition, right? Everybody's uncle or brother has a lawn service. So you're competing with everybody in the neighborhood, really. So whenever I started, and remember, I started this business. I had 3 kids, all right, a wife, no savings, no money. Like I literally started like that. I had a 1985 single cab Chevy, all right, no air conditioner in the truck, and the windshield wipers worked when they wanted to, all right. I literally borrowed a trailer. It was a 10-foot trailer, and I borrowed a mower. The trailer didn't have a gate on it. So I literally tied the mower so it didn't come off while I was driving. This is how I started. The first probably 3 weeks I was in business, this is what my business looked like. I would tie the mower on. I had the weed eater and the blower in the back of the truck. The weed eater and blower were borrowed also. All right. I didn't pay for them. I get to the yard. I untie the mower, I unhook it from the trailer, I go on the mower until the trailer pops back like this, and then I come off and the trailer slams back onto the truck. That's literally how I got to yards. And then I would put 2 boards on the trailer and I would ride up the boards onto the trailer. That's how I started my lawn care. And I started, and I could have went and got that guy's yards that I worked for and poached his yards and went knock on their doors and said, hey, you've been seeing me work for him before. Why don't you let me do it for $10 less per cut? And there was something in me that told me that was wrong. And I don't know where it came from because nobody in my family, like nobody taught me this stuff. But there was just something inside of me that was like, no, I'm not going to build my business that way. I'm going to do it by what I put into it. So kind of like you talked about, I got, the door hangers to start. I got the door hangers. I had my business cards, these ugly business cards, these ugly door hangers. And I went and I put it up on 25 people's door. And then I didn't do anything else. And then I sat there and nothing happened. And I'm like, man, why is my phone not ringing off the hook? Why are people not calling me? I started a business. Aren't all business owners successful? Right? And the truth is, I didn't understand a principle. All right. There's a principle in business. It's massive action. That's the difference. Massive action. Right. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I didn't realize it doesn't take 25 door hangers. It takes 2,500 door hangers. Right. And then once I learned that, it switched in my mind of like, oh, okay. So all I have to do is multiply the effort and then I'll multiply my outcome. Okay, that works. I can do that. But literally the first year that I started, again, I'm 23. I quit school in the 8th grade, no college education, none of this. So understand where I'm coming from. I wasn't a very confident 23-year-old, right? I had 3 kids, and I had the ability to make 100,000 a year. I could have went into the oil field. This is another aspect that I think it's important, because I'm from South Louisiana, and the oil field is a huge industry here. All my family have ran casing, roughneck, derricks. They all worked on the oil rigs, right? So whenever I was 18, it's the first thing I did. Let's go work in the oil field. So I've made 40,000 in the oil field. I've made 90,000 in the oil field before I was 23. I knew that if I decided that I was going to be my best at that, I was going to be capped and stuck at probably $150,000 a year the rest of my life. And half of my life was going to be spent on an oil rig. I knew that at 22, 23 years old. I knew it. I don't know how I knew it, but it was in me and I knew it. So I made a decision at 23 years old, driving around these neighborhoods in this 1985 beat up truck with a borrowed trailer on the back, that I wasn't going to go back and make $80,000 a year in the oil field. I was going to make this work. And the first year I made $20,000 the first year. And that's 20,000 revenue. That's not 20,000 in my pocket. That's 20,000 revenue. All right. The next year I made like right at 40 something, 50. All right. The third year I went from 40 something, 50 to 120,000 in revenue. Man, I thought I was it. I thought, man, I have made it. I'm mid-20s. Boom, I'm making the kind of money that I can make in the oil field. But not really, because it was revenue, right? I still had to pay for gas. I still had to pay for all of this stuff. Well, then I started to get in a spot where, man, I have to pay for new equipment. My equipment's starting to run out. My equipment's starting to wear out. So now I was starting to experience real business dilemmas where you have to make some decisions on how you grow into the future. But this is around the time, I would probably say 24, 25 years old, I started reading books heavily. So around this time, I stopped listening to the radio. I stopped watching TV. I stopped going out and doing anything that didn't have anything to do with business. I literally listened to podcasts. I listened to audiobooks, and I watched interviews on all the major podcasters and business minds. And Grant Cardone was getting huge at this point, right? This was before he became a billionaire. He was probably worth 200 million, 300 million at this time. This tells you how many years ago that was. And I'm consuming this information every day, but I'm consuming the information and I'm not seeing it translate into my life because I'm still struggling. I still don't know how to make it work. So at this point, I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing the huge success that I want. And they're telling me to do massive action. And there's days where I'm finished at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And instead of going knock doors until 8 o'clock at night, I go home. And so I had to make some decisions. Okay, am I really willing to do whatever it takes? And so around that 3-year mark, I decided I'm going to do whatever it takes and I'm going to make this business the best I can make it. It was around that 3-year mark. So I knew to increase my revenue, just doing lawns wasn't going to do it. So I started doing landscaping. Now, I didn't just do like, oh, let me change your mulch and let me trim your shrubs. I'm actually a licensed horticulturalist in the state of Louisiana. So I had to go, just like for the insurance industry, I had to go through the same state exam. I had to study a book this thick to learn every plant species, all of those formulas and all of that. All right. And I had to become licensed. And I started doing landscape jobs, and I got really good at designing landscaping and installing it. So it started out where I would do a job that it paid $1,000. So I would go, I would work, 3 hours, and I would make $400. Well, so what I did was I started saying, okay, well, if I can do that, my yards are taking me about 4 full days, like full days. Well, I'm going to start doing landscaping on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the summertime, because that's another aspect of that business. You have to work 7 days a week from March until September. If you're going to grow to what I was trying to grow to, you have to work 7 days a week, because there's 4 months out of the year you really don't work. So I started doing landscaping on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and cutting my lawns. Now, remember, at this point, I'm a one-man show, and I'm paying one helper every couple days. So when I started doing that, I started getting some traction. I started doing a job. I did a really good job. Other people noticed, and they're like, hey, why don't you come do my house? So I would go do their house, $1,500, $2,000. Well, it started gaining some traction. So I started doing online marketing. I started doing some Facebook. I started running some Google ads. This is around the time back then where if you ran Google ads, the return on investment was huge. Right now, you still get a return on investment, but it's not like it was back then. So I started doing some of that stuff, and man, I started getting more jobs than I can handle. And so I'm like, okay, well, what do you do if you have more work than you can handle? Well, when I asked the people that I was around in my neighborhood, my dad, people I grew up with, they were like, well, just don't do anymore. You just keep doing it all. I'm like, it doesn't add up to me. No, let's hire more people. So I started hiring people at this point, and I actually started building a business. And so really from then, it went from doing $2,500 jobs to doing $5,000 jobs. And now it probably year 5 into the industry, I had 2 full-time employees with a truck, a trailer, and all the lawn equipment. And all they did is work 60 hours a week and cut grass. I didn't cut grass anymore. All they did was cut grass. And then all I did now was build out my book of business for landscaping. And so now I'm going from only doing it 2 to 3 days a week to now I'm doing that 6 or 7 days a week. So I, with a crew, are doing landscaping 6 or 7 days a week. And I have a crew who's cutting grass 60 hours a week, just cutting grass. And so at that point is really when it started to build. And then I started doing jobs that were $15,000 and even above $20,000 per landscape job. And I got really good at it. I liked it. And then at certain point, it was probably year 7. I'd say around year 7, I started to feel the ceiling. I started to look at where I was in the industry, what I was doing, and I started to look around me to the big players. And the big players, the biggest players in the industry were doing $2 million a year. The other big ones, or if they had $1 million a year, I seen what they had to do to get there, and I just felt like, man, I could probably make that kind of revenue in a different industry, and I don't have to work 7 days a week in the hot sun in Louisiana to do it. That's really the questions that started to go into my mind. And so for about 2 years, this is very important to understand. I didn't have those thoughts and just like, oh, let me jump to a different industry. No, I started to prepare me for whatever else that God may have had for me, and to make sure that I was a better person so I can handle those opportunities. And so I stayed in that business and in that industry for about 2 years where I really didn't like it anymore. I didn't like going to work every day. I didn't want to do landscaping. I didn't want to deal with a $10 or $12 an hour employee anymore. Because that's another thing about that industry, man. You're dealing with people that they might not show up. You might have this whole list of people that want their yards cut, and then your crew just doesn't show up. And you call them and they're like, oh, I overslept and then I had something else to do. Wait, what? And then now in that industry specifically, you have 20 people that are calling your cell phone because they all called me directly. Why you guys didn't show up? What are you doing? What's going on? And their yard costs, $30 or $40 to cut. And every time they missed one thing, you got a phone call about it. And it wasn't adding up for me for the amount of effort it took to get that revenue. I just felt like I can do more. And so really how I got it to the, over 200,000 and hitting that 400,000 was mixing the landscaping aspect of it with the lawn care and becoming very profitable on how I did it. I was a stickler. Like when I say I was anal about it, when you came in and you were so slow, we would have probably had a problem. I'm gonna be honest with you. It'd have been tough because I know my numbers. I knew down to the penny every day what my cost was. And then for the yards that we had for that day, what I was going to make, what I was going to have in fuel, all of those things. And so I did have a profitable business, and I could have stopped right there. And for the rest of my life, I could have made 100. I could have spent, let me put it this way. For my family, I could have spent $100,000 a year on my family the rest of my life and really didn't have to work that hard. But that's not, I thought my potential was a lot higher than that. So once we hit that pinnacle, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this up for something better. And that's literally how it happened. The transition, I tried to put people in to manage that company. But like I talked about earlier, I had 3 companies now that took so much time, so much energy that the chaos of trying to make all of that happen, literally we went for like 3 or 4 weeks where nobody touched any of our customers for like 3 or 4 weeks. And you can't do that in this business because if you don't go for 2 weeks, there's a competitor that's already told your yard that they'll do it for $10 less. And that's always in the back of the mind. So that's really how I was able to build that up to that point. And I guess a huge aspect of me growing into that was just the urgency of I had to. I had 3 kids and 4 kids at one point, and I wasn't going to the oil field. I wanted freedom. So the urgency of I have to make this work really is what got us there to be able to grow that company to that level in that industry.
That's awesome. That's super impressive. Yeah, I had enough common sense that I knew I was slow and knew I just wasn't cut out to be a landscaper. It's funny because even for construction, I worked as a carpenter as well, and same thing. Like one day I just stopped getting called for work. Right? Again, I was just too slow. Right? It was just this point in my life where I was just trying to find my way, and then I started a construction company and did like $800,000 in business in 8 months. Right? So, I got some skills I'm really natural at, and swinging a hammer and holding a straight line with an edger weren't them. But cool. All right, man. So let's wrap this up, man. So first off, right, you're hiring, you're recruiting agents nationwide, you're teaching people how to work from home on the phone. You don't need any experience to work with you. You had no experience. You got a bunch of really great producers that started with you, got their license. You help and assist with getting licensed. What's the best way that they can find you, Corey?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me directly. My phone number is 337-534-2233. And if you call me directly, my guarantee to you is this. Everything that I've learned from David, I'll give that all to you. I'll teach you exactly. Like there's a roadmap that as long as you have the drive, I can take you from 0 to 6 figures, but you'll have to put in the work. There's a roadmap and you can do it if you're willing to put in the work. Reach out to me, 337-534-2233. I look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. And if for some reason you're having issues with that phone number or you just got too big to answer the phone for you, throw something in the comments. I'll make sure to connect you with Corey. And again, if you like this, please subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, hit the thumbs up. Definitely want to, appreciate, we get paid as subscribers. That's how we get paid over here. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks again for jumping on with us, Corey. And that's been another episode of Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. Thank you.
Let's go. Thank you, David.